The Horror of the Graveyard Shift. Part 1. The job. I should have known something was wrong when the job posting had been up for 3 months. Security guard positions in a small town like Ravenwood usually got filled within days, especially ones that paid as well as this one did. But I was desperate, 2 months behind on rent, and in no position to ask questions. The interview took place at 11 p.m., which the manager, Mr. Brennan, explained was necessary because the facility operated on a unique schedule. The building itself was unremarkable, a squat, concrete structure on the outskirts of town that I'd driven past 100 times without really noticing. The sign out front simply read, Ravenwood Storage and Archive. Mr. Poir. Brennan was a thin man in his 60s, with deeply sunken eyes and hands that trembled slightly when he handed me the employment contract. "The rules are simple," he said, sliding a laminated card across his desk. "But they must be followed exactly. No exceptions, ever." I glanced at the card. "Graveyard shift rules. Doors lock at 12 a.m. Do not open them for anyone until 6:00 a.m. Remain in the security office from 12 Nastus, 12:15 a.m. Complete your first patrol at 12:30 a.m. Follow the route exactly. Never enter the basement. If you hear your name called, do not respond. Complete your second patrol at 3 a.m. Remain in the office from 5:45, 6 to 6 a.m. Document everything in the logbook." "What's in the basement?" I asked. Mr. Valdez's expression didn't change. "You don't need to know. You just need to not go down there." The pay was too good to refuse. I signed the contract. Part 2. First night. My first shift was on a Tuesday. Mr. Brennan met me at 11:30 p.m. to walk me through the building. The main floor was a maze of corridors lined with storage units and filing cabinets. Industrial fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sterile, greenish glow. Our footsteps echoed in the silence. "Here's the security office," he said, opening a door to a small room with a desk, a bank of monitors showing various hallways, and a logbook. "And here." He pointed to a heavy steel door at the end of the main corridor. "Is the basement. You see this door?" I nodded. "Never open it. Not if you hear sounds. Not if you hear voices. Not if someone tells you they're trapped down there. Never." "Understood?" "Understood," I said, though his intensity was unsettling. He handed me a flashlight and a ring of keys. "Stick to the rules. The last guard who didn't—" He trailed off, then shook his head. "Just stick to the rules." At 11:55 p.m., Mr. Brennan left. I heard the main entrance lock behind him with a heavy clunk. I was alone. The first 15 minutes passed uneventfully. I sat in the security office, watching the monitors and trying to ignore the oppressive silence. At 12:15, I checked the rules card again and prepared for my first patrol. The route was marked on a map. Main corridor, turn right, check units 1 to 24. Left at the intersection, check units 25 to 48. Loop back through the east wing, return to office. Simple enough. I started down the main corridor, flashlight in hand even though the overhead lights were on. My footsteps sounded too loud. About halfway down, I heard something that made me stop. A voice, faint, muffled, coming from somewhere ahead. "Hello, is someone there?" I remembered Rule 5. If you hear your name called, do not respond. But this wasn't my name. This was just someone asking if anyone was there. That was different, right? I moved forward slowly. The voice came again, clearer now. It was coming from behind the basement door. "Please, I'm locked in. I need help." My hand was on my radio, ready to call Mr. Brennan, when I remembered his words. Not if someone tells you they're trapped down there. I backed away from the door and continued my patrol, heart hammering. The voice called out twice more, increasingly desperate, but I forced myself to ignore it. By the time I completed the route and returned to the office, I was sweating despite the building's chill. I documented the voice in the logbook as instructed. When I flipped back through previous entries, I saw similar notes from other guards. 12:47 a.m. Heard knocking from basement. Did not investigate. 1:15 a.m. Voice calling for help from basement. Followed protocol. 2:33 a.m. Scratching sounds from basement door. Remained in office. The entries went back months. Different handwriting, different guards, same experiences. Part 3. The pattern. The next few nights followed a similar pattern. The voice from the basement became a regular occurrence, always during my first patrol. Sometimes it was a man's voice, sometimes a woman's, sometimes a child's, always desperate, always begging to be let out. I learned to steel myself against it. What disturbed me more were the small anomalies I started noticing. Objects that moved between patrols. A chair in the break room that was always facing a different direction. Coffee mugs that appeared on desks in units I knew were empty. And most unsettling of all, footprints. On my 5th night, I found wet footprints in the East Wing corridor. They appeared between my 2 patrols. I would have noticed them at 12:30 a.m., but there they were at 3 and 4 a.m. Small footprints, like a child's, leading from the direction of the basement to storage unit 47, then stopping abruptly. The door to unit 47 was ajar. This wasn't on my patrol route. I wasn't supposed to open units unless they were already open, but the footprints went inside. Against my better judgment, I pushed the door wider. The unit was full of boxes, all labeled with dates. 1982, 1983, 1984, continuing all the way to 2019. Each box was labeled personal effects. I opened the nearest one from 2019. Inside were clothes, a child's clothes, a small pair of sneakers, a stuffed rabbit, and underneath, a folder containing newspaper clippings. Local girl missing, presumed dead, the headline read. I scanned the article. Sophie Chen, age 8, disappeared near Ravenwood storage facility. Last seen walking home from school. Body never found. My blood ran cold. I grabbed another box from 2015. Same thing. Missing child, personal effects, newspaper clippings. Another from 2008. Same. Box after box, going back decades. All children, all missing, all last seen near this building. I stumbled back from the unit, my flashlight beam shaking. That's when I heard it. David. My name, spoken in a child's voice from somewhere behind me. Rule 5. If you hear your name called, do not respond. David, we're down here. We need help. I turned slowly. The basement door, visible at the end of the long corridor, was open. Just a crack. I hadn't opened it. Mr. Brennan had locked it. I'd watched him lock it. Please, David, it's dark down here. We're scared. Multiple voices now. Children's voices overlapping, echoing up from the darkness beyond that door. I ran. I ran back to the security office and locked myself inside, my breath coming in ragged gasps. On the monitors, I could see the basement door was now fully open. The corridor beyond it was pitch black, the darkness seeming to pulse and breathe. And then, one by one, small figures began emerging from that darkness. Part 4. The Truth Children. Dozens of them. Their forms flickering and translucent in the fluorescent light. They moved through the corridors in silence, their feet not quite touching the ground. On the monitors, I watched them spread throughout the building, drifting in and out of storage units, their faces turned upward, as if searching for something. My phone buzzed, a text from Mr. Brennan. "Stay in the office. Do not leave until 6 a.m. Do not look directly at them." I wanted to call him, to demand an explanation, but I couldn't tear my eyes from the monitors. The children were everywhere now. Some were examining the storage units. Others stood motionless in corridors, their heads tilted at unnatural angles. One small girl stood directly in front of the office door, her hand raised as if to knock, but she didn't knock. She just stood there, waiting. At 3:45 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Another text from Mr. Brennan. "Whatever you do, do not open the logbook before 6 a.m. Of course, I immediately looked at the logbook. It was open on the desk, and something, had written in it while I'd been watching the monitors. The handwriting was childish, shaky. "We didn't mean to come here. We were taken. He brought us down to the basement, one by one, year after year. We didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. Now we're stuck, bound to this place. We can't leave. We need someone to let us leave." My hands trembled as I turned the page. More writing, frantic now. "Don't trust Brennan. He's the one. He's always been the one. He brings the guards here to keep us contained. The rules aren't to protect you from us. They're to protect him from what would happen if we got out." The final line was written in a different hand, older, neater. "Every guard before you figured it out eventually. That's why they leave. That's why the position is always open. You have a choice to make." I looked up at the monitors. The small girl was still standing at the door. Now she was holding something, a piece of paper pressed against the office window. I could just make out the words, "Help us." My phone exploded with texts from Mr. Brennan. "Don't believe them. They're lying. Stay in the office." "I'm coming. Stay where you are." I stood up, my legs shaking. The rules card sat on the desk, its laminated surface reflecting the monitor's glow. I picked it up and flipped it over. On the back, in faded pencil, someone had written, "The basement door has a deadbolt on the inside. If you lock it from outside, they can't return before sunrise. They'll be free. But he'll kill you for it." Through the window, I could see the girl's face more clearly now. She wasn't scary. She just looked tired, sad, lost. Part 5. The choice. At 5:30 a.m., headlights swept across the parking lot. Mr. Brennan's car. He was early. I made my decision. I grabbed the ring of keys and left the security office. The moment I stepped into the corridor, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. The children's spirits surrounded me, their forms becoming more solid, more real. They didn't touch me, but I could feel them. Their fear, their desperation, their hope. "Show me," I whispered. They parted, creating a path straight to the basement door. I ran, my footsteps echoing. The keys jangling in my hand. Behind me, I heard the main entrance door unlock. Mr. Brennan was inside. "Stop!" His voice roared through the building. "You don't understand what you're doing." I reached the basement door. The darkness beyond was absolute, but I could feel something down there. Something ancient and cold and hungry. The children weren't trapped in the basement. They were trapped in the building, forced to return to the basement each dawn before the sun could free them, unless the door was locked from the outside. I found the right key, stepped back, and pulled the door shut. The deadbolt was old and stiff, but I forced it home with a heavy clunk. The effect was immediate. The children's forms solidified completely, becoming real, corporeal. They gasped as if taking their first breath in years. Color returned to their faces. The oldest, a teenage boy who I recognized from one of the 1982 boxes, looked at his hands in wonder. We can feel again," he whispered. Mr. Brennan rounded the corner, and what I saw made me understand everything. His face was contorting, aging rapidly, the flesh sagging and graying. He'd been sustained by something in that basement, something that fed on the trapped spirits of children. "You've killed me," he gasped, falling to his knees. "Do you understand? I was keeping them safe, keeping it contained. Now—" But he never finished. His body collapsed inward, imploding into dust and scattered bones. The building began to shake. "Run!" the teenage boy shouted. "We need to get out before sunrise." We ran together, all of us, me and the spirits of 43 missing children. The building groaned and cracked around us. Behind the locked basement door, something roared with rage. The walls buckled, ceiling tiles rained down. We burst through the main entrance just as the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon. The moment the light touched them, the children's spirits began to glow. They turned to face the sun, their faces transforming with joy and peace. "Thank you," the small girl said, looking back at me one last time. "Thank you for letting us go home." One by one, they dissolved into the morning light, finally free. Behind me, the Millbrook Storage and Archive building collapsed with a deafening crash. When the dust settled, there was nothing left but rubble, and, buried deep beneath it, a locked basement door that no one would ever open again. Epilogue. The official report said the building collapse was due to structural failure. The remains of 43 children were found in a concealed room in the basement, along with the decades-old remains of a man identified as Harold Brennan. The case was closed. I never told anyone what really happened that night. Who would believe me? But sometimes, on clear mornings when the sun is just right, I see them. Fleeting glimpses of children playing in parks, their laughter carried on the wind. They're at peace now, free. And I sleep a little easier, knowing I made the right choice, even if it cost me every rule I was supposed to follow. Sometimes the rules aren't there to protect you. Sometimes they're there to protect the monster.